Last week, we started a journey on the road to recovery. And as we begin to navigate what the new normal looks like in our life, there are times that happen that cause a disruption. It's not just an interruption where we pause and we kind of break and then we get back to what we're doing. This is a disruption in our life, and it's going to change the way we do life. And so when we did start this series, we stated one thing last week, that the road to Recovery Road, doesn't start in Washington, D.C., and it doesn't start at our state capitol. That recovery actually begins with me. It actually begins right here. And so I asked you last week to first start with a mindset, to set aside all your thoughts on this pandemic and this crisis, and set aside whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, or you just don't care or whatever, and set those things aside and ask the simple question, what would Jesus do? But more importantly, ask the question, what would Jesus have me do? And I told you last week that I struggle with a lot of things that we're talking about. I kind of gave you my story, and I told you that I'm an undisciplined, entitled, greedy person who can't tell themselves no. And so if you're new here and you're thinking, man, who is this guy and why am I watching this, just tuning in, I would invite you to go back and listen to last week's message to give you some context on that, just to see what we're talking about. But today we're gonna discuss something of how to have some relief as you recover, because we all like that, right? How do we get this little person that tells us, that sits on our shoulder and tells us that we need to do this, that tells you this will make you feel better, that tells you you deserve it, that tells you YOLO. Now, I'm not quite sure that phrase is still used. And I'm sure my teenage daughters are sitting there telling me, Dad, that's old news. Like, you can't use that anymore. And if you don't know what YOLO is, it's a phrase that someone came up with a couple years ago. And so it actually means you only live once. And so I want us to think differently about what culture tells us about you only living once, because that phrase is synonymous with just living carefree and doing whatever comes to mind, and just going out and having fun, and deep down we all know that way of thinking, that way of living will get us in trouble. But unfortunately, we have lived that way many times when it's come to how we spend money, how we operate inside of our finances, because what we do is in that. Because we feel like we have that mentality, what culture tells us you only live once is, what we do is we reach into the future and we leverage our future. Like some sort of like Marty McFly, DeLorean, time machine, and we spend money that we haven't even made yet. And we do that by pulling out the plastic that resides in our wallets. And so the fact of the matter is, we do only live once. There's only one shot we got at this, and that's why it's important to make disciplined, smart decisions, because there aren't any do-overs. We don't get to do this again. And so today I want to talk about something extremely serious and extremely detrimental to us as followers of Jesus, but to us as Americans and to anyone who is living and breathing. And I want to tell you this morning that recovery starts when we start to earn interest rather than pay interest. Recovery starts when we start to earn interest rather than pay interest. There was an article that came across my news feed on Facebook a couple weeks ago, and it actually said that Americans are starting to save more money during this pandemic. And so I click on it and I start to read it. And in there, it actually talks about how Americans are saving 13 cents of every dollar that they earn now, versus normally in regular times, 6 cents is about what Americans save. But see, this article was some sort of guilt trip that people aren't spending, that they aren't going out and spending their money on things in the economy, and they aren't going out and what the government would tell you is stimulating the economy. That's been a popular word. Can I just tell you, I just want to hit on that just a second. You are under no moral obligation to stimulate the economy. It is not your job. It is not my job to make sure that the economy gets stimulated. The only moral obligation that we have as followers of Jesus is to take care of the least of these, and that's it. But saving money is actually a biblical principle. It's actually in the Bible, and it's not even a suggestion. But we don't do it because we're strapped with debt. And some people will tell you, they'll tell you that there's such a thing as good debt. That there's such a thing in our lives that is considered good debt. People will tell you, if you own real estate, that's okay, it's good debt. You own property, that's good debt. And I understand that argument, and I understand what they're saying because I have a mortgage, okay? So I get that. But speaking under the pretense of Scripture, under what the Bible tells us, there's no such thing as good debt. Proverbs 22:7 says the borrower is slave to the lender. There's no verse after that says, well, excluding that mortgage lender, excluding the person that you owe for that piece of property. That's it. It says the borrower is slave to the lender because any time that we have debt, it brings what? It brings risk. Did you know that any bank, your bank, could call you tomorrow morning and say, hey, we're going to need that money back that we loaned you for that piece of property. And you don't have a choice. You got to pay it. You got to pay it. There's risk involved. There's a crazy statistic out there that says this, and this isn't made up. This is 100% true. 100% of the foreclosures in America happen on a house that has a mortgage. Isn't that crazy? 100% of the foreclosures come with someone who's actually owes money on the house. So there's nothing that could be considered good debt. Now that we got that out of the way, and I've kind of debunked some of that, I want to tell you that there is definitely debt that is worse than bad. Okay? There's definitely debt that is worse than a mortgage, than real estate. And that's the debt we want to focus on because that's what the kind of debt that handicaps us financially. And if we can eliminate that really, really bad debt, we're going to be able to recover and be healthier beyond this. Now, look, I'll tell you this. I feel like I'm a little overqualified to speak on debt, okay? Because if they gave PhDs for dumb decisions with debt, my wall would be full of plaques. My wall would be full of diplomas because I've made some really stupid and dumb financial decisions with credit cards. I've made some really dumb financial decisions with debt. Look, I've been through FPU, which is Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University, if you don't know what that is, so much I think I have it memorized. Like I know exactly what he's going to say, when he's going to say it, but here's the thing, we don't like to talk about our finances, do we? Especially in the church. We're like, that's just kind of an off-limits subject that, for the church to talk about, it's so personal. I know pastors that won't preach on finances because they're scared that they're going to offend somebody. Not me. Sorry. I think Jesus talked about money more than he talked about heaven, hell, or prayer combined. And so if Jesus talked about money, then if we're going to be in his church and we're going to be his church, then we need to talk about money too. Now, so I want to relieve something this morning that you may, if you're still there, I want to relieve some things for you this morning. This morning is not about giving. This morning is not about generosity. There's going to be a Sunday for that. This morning is about putting more money in your bank account, about you having more cash on hand. Now, who doesn't like that? Who doesn't like saying, hey, I'm going to give you a way to have more cash in your bank account? I mean, how many pastors have told you that lately? I want to give you a way to have more cash in your bank account. I'm starting to sound like an infomercial now, so I'll get moving. But we have to, if we want more cash in our bank account, we have to break the bondage that debt brings. So just for a second, I want you to imagine, what would it feel like if you got rid of all the financial stress in your house, in your life. You were 100% debt free. No mortgage, no credit cards, no car loans, no boat loans. Doesn't that feel good? Feels freeing, doesn't it? It brings a smile to my face. Man, what's it feel like? What would it feel like to be able to go on that vacation and not have to worry about the vacation coming home with you and paying for it for the next 6, 8, 9, 10, 12 months or 12 years? What would it feel like if your faucet broke and you were able to just go and fix the leaky faucet? What would it feel like if you were able to go through this pandemic and not stress? And some of you, I know what you're thinking, there's no way. There's no way. There's no way I just can't do this. Well, can I just invite you this morning to kick that little red guy or the little guy in the red suit off your shoulder right now? Because with God, like we say, like my shirt says, with God, we believe anything is possible. But I think many times when we think about getting out of debt, when we think about how we can have that stress-free life, I think sometimes we think of it in a wrong light. I think many times we rely on us. That if I can go get, and I can just make more money, then I'll pay off this debt. If I can just get a raise, I'll do this and pay off this debt. If I could get another job, I'll start another business. I'll just, we rely on us so much, and we forget the most important component in your life if you call yourself a follower of Jesus, and that's the spiritual component. We don't add that in to us finding financial freedom. Now, I'll say this, and I'm going to say it again here in a little bit probably, but this is not a legalistic thing. Okay? We don't do this just to say that we got to, just to say that we're just trying to be a better follower of Jesus. No. This is a healthy thing. Because the way we handle our finances says a lot about our relationship with Jesus. And so I want to invite you to invite God into your debt. Because remember, it starts with me. And we're gonna start this morning by inviting God into our debt by praying 3 simple prayers. Now, I understand last time I did a series on dangerous prayers. They were dangerous. And so these are dangerous prayers too when it comes to finances. These are prayers that are going to be hard. Okay? These are prayers that are going to be hard. But the first one is this. It says, the first prayer in this simple prayer, and it's easy, and you can remember it says, God, give me self-control. God, give me self-control. Help this undisciplined, entitled, greedy person with no nerve. Reverse all those things in my life, God. Help me get rid of what I'm holding on to. Give me self-control. God, help me when that little guy shows up on my shoulder. Help me to kick him to the curb. When he tells me I need this or this will make me happier. God, give me self-control. Proverbs 25:28 says this, says, like a city whose walls are broken down is a person who lacks self-control. When we lack self-control, it makes us vulnerable. It leaves us vulnerable. And that's in any area of our life. That's not just money. If we lack self-control sexually, we're going to be vulnerable in that area. If we lack self-control eating, we're going to be vulnerable in that area. That's any area. We're not, and it's not something. If we lack self-control, it leaves us vulnerable. We have to exercise self-control, and we need God's help to do that. I'll tell you, and I'm not picking on anyone here because both men and women have this problem. Because here's the thing, I think many times men get labeled as the big spenders, don't we? It's okay to say because we do. I know we do. I'm a big spender, and women get labeled as the frugal ones, don't they? I'll let you know. Here's the mentality in my household. So, my wife will come in and she'll come in with all like bags of stuff from like Dollar General or something like that because you can find a Dollar General every 5 miles you go. So she'll come in with like bags of stuff from Dollar General and be like, "Oh, really? Well, how much all that cost? $200, but I got 200 things. Look, I saved this and I saved that and I saved this and I saved that and I saved this and I saved that." And I'm just like, "But it's $200." And then I'll come in with like one thing. And she'll say, "How much did you spend?" $200. You spent $200 on one thing? Or what? You could have bought so much more with that. You see, the problem is we've duped ourselves into thinking that if we get a deal, it's okay. Or if we can just use it once, that it justifies the purchase. And we don't come up at it and say, do I really need this $200 thing? Do I really need these 200 things for $200? Because here's the way it happens in our household. Those 200 things that my wife buys or that one thing that I buy, we spent $400 on it. You know what it all ends up? Goodwill. I mean, it's just where it ends up. So we got to pause. God, do I really need this? God, give me self-control. Do I really need this? And like I said, don't do this in a legalistic way. Don't, because if you're like me, I have a bend towards legalism sometimes, and I fight hard not to be a legalist. And so don't do it where you're sitting in the grocery store and there's green beans sitting on the shelf, and one's $1.29 and one's 89 cents, and you're sitting there, I really want this $1.29, but I got to have self-control because I need to buy the one that's, don't, okay? If God's told you need to spend money on the $1.29 can of green beans, or he's told you need to save money on the 89 cent, you don't have to pray about it every time, okay? I'm going to let you off the hook on that. Just do what you need to do. But I guarantee you, if I'd have stopped and I asked God about some of the purchases I've made, I'd end up keeping more money in my wallet, earning interest, than I would have paying interest. God, give me self-control. The next prayer that we need to pray, God, give me understanding. God, give me understanding. You know, when we go and we buy something and we finance it, I highly doubt, whether it's a car or a house or something small on a credit card, I highly doubt that if we went and bought it and it had the price tag of what we're going to pay for it in the future, we would ever buy it. I think we're smarter than that, aren't we? But we don't look at it that way. If we buy a car and that car's price tag is $15,000, but we end up paying $25,000 for it, like we don't go out and say, well, I paid $25,000 for it in the long run. No, we say it only cost me $15,000. We understand that we're going to pay more for it. But the problem is that we have an understanding that it's okay. So what I want to ask us is, God, give me understanding. Give me understanding. Look what Hosea 4:6 says, is my people are destroyed. My people, God's people, us, Christians, followers of Jesus, they're destroyed for lack of knowledge. God, give me understanding. There's two types of understandings in this world. There's two types of people that understand things. There's scenario one. This is the type of person. He says, the scenario one, they tell themselves no. They say, I can't have everything I want. I can't have everything that even I can afford. I can't have everything that even the people that make the same amount of money that I do have. They live on a budget. If they don't have any money in their wallet, guess what they don't do? They don't get it. They don't buy it. And then there's scenario two. It's the person that says, how much are the payments? How long can I pay for that? And that mentality causes us, like I said in the beginning, to reach into the future and spend money we haven't made yet. But the funny thing about this is this all comes full circle, doesn't it? Because usually they end up getting told the same thing, but they get told by two different people. You see, the first person is telling themselves that. The second person, the bank is telling them no. The lender is saying, you can't afford this. The lender is saying, you can't have this even though your colleague has it. They're saying, hey, you got to start living on a budget. And you get to the register and you look in your wallet and you literally can't buy it because you don't have any money in your account. You see the differences. One tells themselves no, the other gets told no. One is working to pay for their future, the other one is working to pay for their past. One sees a bump in the road, it's time to adjust. The other, when they hit the bump in the road, it causes a head-on collision. God, give me understanding. Give me understanding of why I can't have this now, God. Give me understanding to understand why I don't need to pay interest on this. God, give me understanding. Our last prayer is this, and maybe the most profitable prayer that we can pray when it comes to our finances. God, give me a plan. God, give me a plan. Proverbs 21:5 says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit. As surely as haste leads to poverty. What is haste? Haste is just kind of, it's YOLO. It's like you only live once. You're just living footloose and fancy free. And you're just going out, you see it, you want it, you go buy it. We got to have a plan. God, give me a plan. Benjamin Franklin said, if we fail to plan, then we're planning to fail. If we fail to plan, if we don't take the time to map out a plan, then all we're doing is planning to fail. We have a plan. We got to have a plan. It starts with a budget. It's called a budget. Stan likes to call it a spending plan because we like to spend. You know, we have one of those here at the church. And if we came up to you and you said, can we see the church's budget? And we said, well, we don't have a budget. We just kind of operate as if something comes along, we buy it, right? And you see how crazy that sounds? Like nobody expects the church to operate like that, but yet we do it in our own lives, don't we? And sometimes, you know what happens to our budget? It gets blown up. Like there was no way in 2019, in October and November, when we were working through the budget for 2020, there was no way to know that we were going to be out of church for however long. There was no way to know that there was a pandemic that was going to hit to keep us from meeting. There was no way to know those things. So what do? We've adjusted. We've adapted our spending. We changed our plan mid-course. You can do that? Yeah, you can do that. You see, here's the thing. We got to have a plan. And it's got to start with God's plan. Because here's what I know in my own life. I didn't wander into debt, and I didn't wander out of debt. I had to have a plan. And I still have a plan. We've got to have a plan to get out of debt. And it's not complicated. I think every single one of you are smart enough to figure this out. You know, it starts with writing everything out and saying, this is how much I make. I make X amount of dollars. This is how much I spend. At the end of the month, down here at the bottom, I can't spend more than I make. Got to get on a budget. Start paying off our debts one by one. Start seeing freedom by praying these three prayers. God, give me self-control. God, give me understanding, and God, give me a plan. Give me a plan. Best place to start as we journey on the road to recovery. Father, this morning I ask, God, that you help us. God, ultimately, this is about us and following your word, God. This is about us and being better followers of you, because, God, I know when we are strapped with debt, I've seen it in my own life. When you call us to do something, when you call us to go, it keeps us. The debt holds us. And then ultimately your word that says we're slave to the lender is true. And God, we don't want to be a slave to anything, because your word tells us that what you did on the cross set us free. It broke the chains of bondage. It broke the chains of slavery. So God, we want to be free. We want to follow you. We want to do what you say. We want to heed to your call. God, we want to be better followers of you, and to do that, we have to understand we've got to get rid of the things that hold us back. And God, debt is one of the big ones. So Father, help us in these moments. Help us to be disciplined. Help us to have self-control. Help us to understand. And God, give us a plan. Father, I thank you that we can come to you for every matter in the world. That you've spoken into every single thing that we deal with. We have the opportunity to come to you, even in matters We don't think we have the opportunity. God, you've spoken into it. We thank you. Father, I thank you for who you are, and I thank you for your Son. In your name I pray. Amen.